Hey yo, what's good y'all? Welcome back. This is Tizzler. Today I got a special video for y'all. I want to count down my 10 personal favorite games that released in 2017. I just thought this video would be a great way to cap off an amazing year in gaming. So much good stuff came out. So much stuff that I didn't even get a chance to play every single thing that I want, and there are still games that I have yet to beat, but this list is only going to be games that I did play. So if there's a game that you think should have been on the list that's not on the list, it's probably just because I didn't play it. So I'm going to start at number 10, go all the way up to number 1, and I'm going to tell y'all a little bit about the game and why exactly I thought it needed a spot on the list. So with all that stuff being said, let's go ahead and hop right into number 10. First up at number 10, we got a game that I hadn't even originally planned to buy at the start of 2017. Like, I had no intention, honestly, of ever really buying one of these games again. Call of Duty World War II. Now, me and Call of Duty, we kind of go back. We go back to the original Modern Warfare. I love the original Modern Warfare. I loved even more Modern Warfare 2. I loved Black Ops 1. I somewhat liked Black Ops 2. After that, I kind of told myself, okay, this is getting to be enough. I'm never going to buy another Call of Duty game again until they kind of reassess and get their stuff together as far as like what makes a fun game, what they want to do with this series. Maybe even stop milking it. They haven't stopped milking it yet, but they have gotten more studios involved, which gives each studio more time to make a better game pretty much. So this year, Call of Duty World War II, they went back to the boots on the ground. No more of that futuristic garbage, jetpacking around, freaking getting shot in the back every 2 seconds. No more of that garbage. We're back to good old Call of Duty World War II. Reminds me of World at War, another one of my favorite Call of Duty games. I actually saw this, I was like, okay, this game looks pretty good. I decided to jump back in. I was not disappointed. I really like the gameplay. I really like what Sledgehammer did with the aesthetic of the game. I really like what they did with the progression system. The loot boxes are there, but they definitely don't feel too intrusive. I really don't feel like I have to buy loot crates or anything like that in order to progress. The items in the loot crates aren't even that great. It's like a bunch of grips half the time, so that's not a big problem. There are cool guns you can earn, however, you can earn them straight up through gameplay, no randomness involved at all. Other than that, it's pretty much Call of Duty. It's kind of reminds me of the older Call of Duty you would expect. It's the same shooting's still fun, multiplayer is fun. They got all the modes you would expect. The new thing they added this time around were the headquarters, which is kind of like Destiny's Tower. Doesn't really add too much to the game other than the fact that you can now 1v1 people in a specially designed map, so that's cool. But other than that, yeah, it's Call of Duty. Not too much to say on that. Get it if you like Call of Duty. If not, it's okay to pass this one. But on to the next one on the list. Next, at number 9, on one of my favorite Nintendo consoles, the 3DS, we got the long awaited Metroid Samus Returns. Finally, we got another entry to the Metroid series, a 2D entry at that, 2.5D I guess, technically speaking, but it plays like a 2D Metroid game. Now, the last Metroid game that I played was the 3D Metroid, one of the 3D Metroid games. It was part of the Metroid Prime trilogy that came out on the Nintendo GameCube. So that was like, what, mid-2000s? So that tells y'all how long ago it has been since Metroid has really been around, and they came back with a vengeance with this one. It is in the style, like I said, of the 2D Metroid, so think like Super Metroid or Metroid Zero Mission, Metroid Fusion, all those things, all games which I love, by the way, and I love this game equally. The only difference in this game is that it is a little bit faster. They added a parry mechanic, so where like if you time it right during an enemy's attack, you can stun them, finish them off real quick, which of course makes all of the enemies in the game have to be more aggressive to compensate for this, which makes the gameplay overall faster. It seems like Samus moves and jumps and rolls and stuff a lot faster than in the older games. I've never done like a direct comparison or anything on that, so That game is awesome though. It follows the exploration of you would expect in a Metroid game. You're going through, you're clearing the map, you're unlocking abilities that will allow you to then travel further deeper in the map. It's a solid Metroid game. The only downside are the boss fights get kind of repetitive, but it's really not that big a deal because the fights are still fun in and of themselves. So all that said, I really would recommend this game to any of you guys who haven't played it. If you do own a 3DS, it's really worth it. True return to the Metroid series. Makes me hype about Metroid Prime 4, even though that's a 3D game. But on to number 8. Next up at number 8, this game was a very pleasant surprise to me. At the time of purchasing it, I never would have thought that it would end up on a list of my 10 favorite games of the year, but indeed it did, and that game is on one of my favorite consoles of the year, if not my favorite console of the year, the Nintendo Switch. The game is Splatoon 2. For those of y'all who don't know, Splatoon 2 is Nintendo's take on the first-person multiplayer shooter. It is very fun in the Nintendo sort of way. Very lighthearted, very goofy. It's about squid people shooting ink at other squid people. But the twist here is that, well, I'll talk about the multiplayer twist. The multiplayer twist here is that each team has a color of ink, and the objective is to cover most of the map with your color of ink. So whichever team has most of the map covered with that ink ends up winning. And what this does is it creates this weird new multiplayer dynamic where you're always doing something, you're always contributing to your team, even if you're not the best at shooting other players. So that is really awesome. It kept all the matches really fun, kept me coming back for a long time. Along with the other modes, they have Salmon Run, which is a horde mode, their take on a horde mode. It's kind of like a mix of horde and capture the flag. And there is also a single player campaign, which is more of a series of like platforming levels, kind of similar to something like Super Mario Sunshine of all things. So if you guys are a fan of that, you'll probably be a fan of this game's campaign. But overall, I recommend this game to anybody who has a Switch. If you enjoy third-person shooters or just shooters in general, I found this game really fun. I had never touched Splatoon before. I never played the demos. I never played the first game in the series, and I'm glad I picked up this game. There's also customization, like you can unlock different clothes with different stats that you can then re-roll, and it's kind of that gear chase, and I love any game that lets you dress your characters in clothes that you earn from gameplay. I love cosmetics, so another plus in this game for me. So I recommend you guys get that if you're into third-person shooters. It's a really awesome game. Even though this is number 7, this game is probably personally the closest game to my heart on this list, and probably the closest franchise to my heart in general right now. Some of you are going to be in shock when you hear what I'm about to say, but number 8 has to go to Destiny 2. Now, I know Destiny 2 has had a lot of problems. Destiny 1 also started off with a lot of problems, but I just love what Bungie is trying to do with this game. Like, as a concept, as an idea, a first-person shooter MMO has never been done before, and they execute first-person shooting so well. Like, it's the best shooting I've ever felt in a game, in my opinion, hands down. All they have to nail is the RPG elements now. But Destiny, like I said, the shooting is really solid. Campaign's a little weak. Multiplayer is fun. The gear chase is fun. The loot chase is fun. This time around, though, there wasn't a whole lot of content to play, like similar to when Destiny 1 first launched. You kind of play through the content and then you're kind of done really quickly. Destiny 1 at the end of its life cycle had a whole lot more content, but a lot of that just disappeared with Destiny 2, so that is kind of the reason why the game is super low on this list, just because I didn't get really as much playtime as I did out of the first game, as just there isn't as much content as there was at that point. So Destiny 2, still an awesome shooter, still have, you know, great movement mechanics. Raids are amazing. The cooperating with your team is as exhilarating as ever. That feeling of accomplishment when you finally beat a hard boss after hours of figuring out mechanics, like, there's almost nothing like it. So that's why I gotta put Destiny 2 on this list, solid spot number 8. one of my favorite games this year, hands down. I will continue to play it throughout 2018 and 2019, I'm sure, as they continue to release expansions. So unlike most of the games on this list, this is going to be a game that I continually go back to, as that's kind of how they designed it. So Destiny 2, very solid ideas, solid game, not a perfect game. Still a lot of work to be done, but I have faith in Bungie that they can pull through in the end. Next up, number 6, we got the most recent game that I played in 2017 to appear on this list, Nier Automata. Nier Automata is a action game kind of reminiscent of Devil May Cry or say Bayonetta, but with more RPG elements mixed in, like loot and stats and stuff like that. This game is a gameplay like phenomenon, and that sounds like really exaggerated the way I said that, but like that's really how I feel. This game, like the story is kind of weird and like kind of off. Like you can still follow it and you don't really need to have played the previous game. I didn't play the previous game. You don't really need to have played that game in order to understand this story, but the way the story is designed so that you go through and do multiple playthroughs in order to fill in plot holes that appear with each playthrough. So they give you a really good incentive to go back and replay this game, which is a very deep, very long game, I should say. It's not a small game by any stretch of the imagination. And that is always good to see in a time of like these kind of multiplayer games kind of coming out with like not a lot of content, because there's like things like microtransactions and all that type of stuff in them. Star Wars Battlefront being an example, but it's good to see solid, amazing single player games, and it's always good to see really good action games with really good RPG elements all in the same package. This game is about like androids in the future fighting to reclaim Earth from an alien race that uses robots as their weapons. So basically you're just doing a lot of hacking and slashing through all of these robots, a lot of shooting. The really cool thing about this game is that it literally switches genres mid-level. So you'll be like regular third-person action game and suddenly it'll switch to what do you call it, Galaga style like Space Invaders type game, or it'll turn into like a bullet hell shooter, or it'll turn into like a side-scrolling bullet hell shooter, a top-down bullet hell shooter slash hack and slash action game, twin stick shooter. There's not twin sticks, but you use the stick to aim and R2 to shoot. You can actually remap all of the controls, which is another awesome thing that you don't find in a lot of games. But yeah, it's just really fun, and they actually nail all of these different genres like really fun. It's a really arcading feeling game, really fast paced. If you love action gameplay, fast paced combat, a lot of hacking and slashing, you will definitely love this game. Honestly, if you like any type of modern game or old school game, you'll probably love this game. It's just a really good game. Definitely deserves a spot on this list. I was originally afraid that I wouldn't make it, but I did. I got it. It was on sale. I played it in time, and everything was good from there. We're finally getting into the top 5 now, the cream of the crop games of 2017, and we're going to start it off with Horizon Zero Dawn. Horizon Zero Dawn is an open world game set in the far future but reminiscent of the far past. So what I mean by that is it's kind of like caveman times in the future where people are back to hunting and technology is not that far. People live in tribes. However, the world has been overrun with this robotic kind of animal life. So you'll see like robot birds, robot giraffes, like all these robot animals just roaming around like they own the land, and we kind of just survive around them. We hunt them for their parts, their materials, their technology, make weapons and whatnot out of them. And this is all tied into the gameplay, the crafting system, the upgrade mechanics, all that. The gameplay in this game is really fun. I think that is what kind of drew me to keep playing this game and what has really landed this game in the top 5. It was going to be on this list no matter what, because it is an open world game that stands out in a time where I am very fatigued with open world games. So many of them had started coming out after The Witcher came out that I just really got tired of them. there's only 2 open world games on this list. The next one is higher up. We'll get to that eventually. But for Horizon Zero Dawn, the gameplay is what I thought made it stand out. The bow combat is really fun. The way time stops and the way your character moves and slides and the way you target weak points and strategize in real time to take down these giant, obviously more powerful than you mechanical beasts that roam the land. They get really huge and really epic, the battles do. The story was really cool. It had like an element of choice, so you could make dialogue choices which would kind of affect the story. I don't even think they really affected the story, actually. I think they were just dialogue choices just to be dialogue choices. They affected like the conversation and like certain characters' reactions to you, but other than that, it wasn't like telltale or anything like really changing the way how the story continues. But other than that, it was really what you would expect. They took a lot of hints from Witcher, like with kind of the map system, the quest system, the like Witcher vision is in there where you're tracking footprints to hunt and whatnot. All your typical, you know, open world mechanics are in there with a little of their added twist and whatnot. Everything's executed very well, and the whole thing is in a very, very interesting package. The concept and the time period and the idea behind the story of the game is something that I don't think has ever been done before, and that's what I think really makes this game stand out and deserve a spot on this list. Ever since the first Dark Souls, and maybe even Demon Souls for some people, pretty much ever since Souls has become synonymous with a genre and a type of gameplay, we all thought that samurai mixed with this type of gameplay would be awesome. I know I'm not the only one who thought it. I'm pretty sure everybody else thought it too. And finally it happened with the number 4 game on the list, which is Nioh. Nioh is a Souls-like quote-unquote game set in like a feudal time period with demons and samurai and ninja, all that type of stuff. It's very dark, similar to Dark Souls, very hard combat. The gameplay, I must say, I may get some hate for saying this, but I must say the gameplay honestly in Nioh is probably better than Dark Souls. It's tighter, it's more responsive, there's more information given to you on if you're performing well or if you're not performing well, and that aspect just makes the combat really fun. Like the combat alone is really fun in that game. Although the story is more cinematic, I don't enjoy it as much as the story in Dark Souls, because the lore in Dark Souls is a lot more deep and mysterious, and the way you figure it out kind of adds to the community of the game. But Nioh has a solid story. I respect it for having cutscenes. I respect any game for having fully voiced cutscenes, all that stuff. A story from start to finish all the way through that you can get into without having played any other games, having known anything. It sets itself up pretty well, and it's got a good amount of content in there, so you can replay the game once you beat it. You can earn better and better gear. The gear chase is really good. I really like that aspect of it. It reminds me of a lot of Diablo, with gear is very generous, like gear is popping out left and right and has different colored tiers to it, and you're constantly trying to upgrade gear and make new gear. And the gear chase is really, like, I love any game with a gear chase, and it definitely does that better than other Souls games do. So this game is really awesome if you enjoy like loot and Dark Souls type combat and just a single player game with replayability. And it's not even just single player, like you can play with a friend and you can actually find your friend to play with. The matchmaking, they thought it out. It works really well. You're never really stuck in an area because you can always call in a teammate. So all that stuff is really good. They did an awesome job with this game, and I definitely hope for more and even better Souls-like games coming in the future. Mario Kart 8! This point in the list is where Nintendo games really started taking over the year. They came back strong with the Switch, and all of the games on the Switch, I haven't played them all, but all of the ones that I played have been awesome. I really love them all. At number 3, we got my favorite racing game of all time. I'm not a racing game fan, by the way, but my favorite racing game of all time, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, released for the Switch. I know this game released already on the Wii U, but the version that released on the Switch does have additional content. It does have Switch only content, and it is the first time that I played the 8th edition to the series. I have played all the other ones up until the 8th one, but I waited for the Switch to play the 8th one, and this game is awesome. It will make you love this racing game even if you hate all other racing games. Anybody who likes games needs to play this game. Same for all of pretty much the top 5 games on this list. Anybody who likes games should play all of these games. This one specifically, it is so much fun. It is fun in its purest form. There's like racing. It's just racing, random items, you and your friends, you and random people. Chaos. How can you really get much better than that? There's online gameplay. Online on the Switch is really good. There hasn't been much lag, latency, nothing like that. Connecting, finding games is really fast. There's added maps and modes, and all the DLC that's ever been released for the game is with this edition. There's a lot of customizable car parts to unlock. At one point I was playing with a friend and they were like surprised at how many different car parts and parts you could customize your car with. So like I said, Nintendo nails like very many RPG elements in games, and somehow they even included those into this game with chasing those car parts, unlocking, speccing, min-maxing your car the way you want it so that it performs the way you want it to. And all of that stuff, it gets my vote. It's on Switch, one of the best games of the year. If you own a Switch, you definitely have to get this game. Definitely, hands down, you're not doing yourself a favor if you miss it. Next up is another game that is just pure fun, the absolute definition of fun. Something that Nintendo really seems to nail in all their games is Super Mario Odyssey. Came out for the Switch. I have played the heck out of this game since it came out. It is up there in my favorite 3D Mario platforming games. The controls are super tight. The gameplay is super tight. The way you move through the levels is super tight. The level design is awesome. The levels are each unique. You will probably remember all of the levels. If you play this game, you will definitely have a favorite level. You will definitely also have a least favorite level, but I think that speaks to the game design in itself and just how all of the levels are different and memorable. There's a new mechanic where you throw your hat. His name's Cappy. You take over these different animals and objects, and you use those to help you progress through the different levels, and it kind of makes each capture or each possession kind of feels like its own mini game, to where like the controls and the gameplay changes just enough to where you still recognize it as a Mario game, but at the same time you feel like you're experiencing the game in a different way that would be impossible just as normal Mario. So it expands the gameplay in that way, and on top of all that, once you beat the game, the end game opens up like so far. Like there's so much to do after you beat the game. I have not finished it all. There's something like 900 moons or something ridiculous like that. That's the item you collect in this game, similar to stars in Mario 64, and you can collect these moons to your heart's content, and as you collect them, you unlock new costumes that you can put on your character and play through the game as. And costumes and consumables, or not consumables, sorry, costumes and cosmetics are always awesome, and no microtransactions anywhere to be found. I should point that out about these Nintendo games, which is awesome. Finally, we're here. Number 1, my favorite game of the year. I'm sure a lot of you can probably already guess what it is, because it's such a good game that it didn't appear on the rest of this list, so obviously it has to be number 1. You guessed it, it's The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Nintendo Switch. This game, honestly, is another open world game, but even on a way different level than Horizon. The way it shook up the conventions of an open world, and it got me to completely forget about my open world fatigue. The way that this game is presented, it's different. Like, you explore, it's pure exploration at its finest. You're just dropped into this open, huge map, and literally the entire map is your playground. You can go anywhere you can set your eyes on. That means you can climb anything and you can go anywhere. The climbing mechanic is what really sets this game apart, and I think it's really the main gameplay mechanic. So you have a stamina bar and you can literally climb any surface in the game. Any surface that's there, you can climb it. You can go over it as long as your stamina permits it, but there's stamina consumables that you can cook or that you can ingest, and they will help extend that stamina, as well as just naturally upgrading your stamina through gameplay over time, but it gives you like a new sense of freedom to where like no other game, like you just can't explore. Like say if I want to go to point B and I don't feel like taking the long way, I can say, oh, I'll just climb the top of this mountain and then just glide down on my paraglider until I get there. And it's like the game looks amazing too, so being able to do that and just see the world while you're doing it and see all these creatures and inhabitants, and the gameplay is also tight in this game. The combat's tight, the puzzles are well thought out. There's a lot of them. The dungeons, there aren't as many dungeons, but there's a lot more mini shrines, which are like self-contained puzzles. There's just so much to do in the game. There's loot now, so like you're gearing your character, you're collecting armor, outfits, weapons, shields, and you're constantly changing. There's a durability system to where your weapons and shields will break after you use them, so you're constantly having to switch and try out different weapons and always picking up new weapons, so you're never just gonna find a favorite thing that you keep forever, other than, spoilers, the Master Sword, of course, but you know you get the Master Sword in every Zelda game. So yeah, there's just a whole lot to do. This game is massive. I still have not seen probably nearly everything that this game has to offer. There's so many secrets. Nothing's just given to you. Nothing's just laid out directly in front of you. Anything that you find, so that kind of just makes the whole experience unique to you. This game is a must play. I can't say that enough. This is probably the most must play game in a long time. So definitely buy it, play it if you haven't played it. It's great. The best game of 2017 in my opinion. My favorite game of the year. One of my favorite Zelda games. I don't know if it'll end up being my favorite of all time. Right now it's A Link to the Past, but right now it's looking good. It's looking good. I don't know if any open world game is going to top Zelda Breath of the Wild anytime soon. It's got my open world vote, and I'm pretty much spoiled off it, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to go back to other open world games after this. But that's been my list, guys. My top 10 games of 2017. Like I said, only games that I played are on this list. So shout out to the other games. You know, Wolfenstein I didn't get to play. There was a couple other things, little indie games too, that I didn't get to play that I wish I did, that might have made it on the list, but who knows. I'm hoping I'll have time to go back and get into that backlog starting in 2018, play some of these games, and maybe even let y'all know what I think about some of them. So I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I hope y'all get to play all of these games if you haven't played them already, and like, subscribe if you want to see more content from me, and I will catch y'all in the next video. Peace.